Hi, this is Dr. Daniels, and welcome to Healing with Dr. Daniels. Today is Sunday, November 3rd, 2019, and today's topic is Study Design is Everything. Why most studies prove nothing. So today what I'm going to do is take a look at a study comparing different diets and their effectiveness in preventing pre-diabetes. And we're going to talk about what the study actually tells you and what the study actually measured and the impetus behind the study. These are all just absolutely fascinating. A lot of people will read a study, or someone else will read the study and tell them, oh, the study proved this or that, when actually not at all. But first, we're going to take our turpentine. So, there we go. This is a pipette, and it's a lot easier to use than most droppers. And so what I do is I have the turpentine go right up to the neck there, which is 2.5 cc's, which is half a teaspoon. Then what we're going to do is take some white sugar. Yum, yum, yum. White sugar, white sugar. Here we are, white sugar. And we're going to just dump that turpentine right there on that sugar. Now you should be able to see, let me move further away. There we go. You should be able to see that the sugar is turning a bit grayish. We're going to put this over here, that over there. And again, I like to put water in my mouth so it goes on a lot easier. Many of you will remember from The Sound of Music, I believe it's Mary Poppins, actually, Mary Poppins, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. And yes, they were talking about turpentine. All right, next we're going to take Shilajit Gooey Tar. And we're taking this, I take it, because it's a wonderful trace mineral supplement. And I drink distilled water. All right, there you go. But you can see the black goo on the spatula. Okay. We're going to take that, put it in our water. I'm going to take a drink first. Doom. That's going to dissolve. We'll take that later. If I don't remember, I will take it off camera, but it will be ingested. How often do I take turpentine? At least once a week. And I try to take it 2 or 3 times a week. It is really just a major tonic. We'll be answering questions later on that you've emailed in. The email address for questions, by the way, is jdaaniels@gmail.com. All right, so we're going to talk about the differing diets and their effectiveness in preventing pre-diabetes. Now, you need to understand what is pre-diabetes and what are the implications of pre-diabetes. Okay. So pre-diabetes is a fasting blood sugar. Fasting is important. That means the time. When is the blood sugar taken? And the fasting blood sugar is a blood sugar taken when you first get up in the morning before you have had anything to eat. It is not before meals. It is not 2 hours after a meal. It is the first blood sugar in the morning when you wake up. This is important because it is the only blood sugar that you can use to diagnose diabetes. You can take other blood sugars all day long, maybe to help you adjust your medication dosage if you choose to take medication. But for the diagnostic criteria, it is based exclusively on the fasting blood sugar. Okay. So it's a fasting blood sugar level between 100 and 125, and this is considered pre-diabetes, and this is sometimes called impaired fasting glucose. I think that's what it was called way back when in the old days, 30 years ago when I was in medical school. Okay. And so a fasting blood sugar of 126 or more is type 2 diabetes. So there you go. So we have to understand what are the health implications of having pre-diabetes. So if you have pre-diabetes, what does that mean? Nothing. So if you have pre-diabetes and that's all you ever have, then your life expectancy is the same as any healthy person. You're not at any increased risk for anything except diabetes. So if you have prediabetes, then you're just as healthy as the next guy in terms of your day-to-day activities and implications for life expectancy. That's prediabetes. However, you have a 21% chance of continuing on to get diabetes. Well, but how many people have this? 48.3% of Americans have prediabetes. Let's just round it up to 50%. Make the math easy on us, okay? Because we don't want to strain our brain on numbers. We're trying to get the point here. 50% of Americans have prediabetes. Well, how many Americans have diabetes? 9%. So 9% of a condition called diabetes. Diabetes is associated with increased risk of heart attack, stroke, and about a 5 or 6 year shortened life expectancy. So, prediabetes, a prediabetic is healthy. There are no medications required. They are healthy. Why are no medications required? No medications are required because they've done studies on different drugs or medications that they would give for prediabetes, only to find none of them improved the person's condition. In other words, the healthy person was, healthy and did not get any healthier as a result of drugs. In fact, actually had increased death. So, this is why no drugs are presently recommended for pre-diabetes. So, we have pre-diabetes, let's call it what it is, healthy. Then you have diabetes, let's call it what it is, elevated blood sugar with increased risk of complications. Not all diabetics get complications. And the decreased life expectancy is only an average. Many diabetics actually have a long and full life. Which brings me up to my favorite people, those Hispanics. So we have something going on in America called the Hispanic paradox. It means there are these people who are native Spanish speakers, okay? So if you're not a native Spanish speaker, you do not qualify as Hispanic under this definition. So you must be a native Spanish speaker. That means fluent in Spanish, and that's your first language. But you happen to live in the United States. Okay, those people. Okay, they have a diabetes frequency of 12.1%. Yes, higher than the average for Americans. But they live 7 years longer than the average American and healthier. So in other words, they walk and talk and function very nicely. Okay. So we need to understand then, what is the present recommendation for prediabetes? So if you have prediabetes, the goal is to stay pre-diabetic or healthy and not progress to diabetes. All right. And so this is what the CDC says. Actually, this is what one site says about it. So prediabetes is a fork in the road. Ignore it, and your risk for type 2 diabetes goes up. That's it. Your risk goes up. So it's not like you're having a car accident. Let's be clear. Your risk for an adverse event goes up. You don't have the adverse event. This is not the adverse event. There's nothing adverse about it. Risk goes up. Okay. So lose a modest amount of weight, get regular physical activity, and your risk goes down. Modest weight loss, like 5 to 7% of body weight. Okay? This is the cure. The cure for prediabetes is losing 7% body weight and 30 minutes a day of exercise. It can be as simple as walking. Okay, that is the cure for prediabetes. When I say cure, and this is what they mean, is that it does not progress to diabetes. Okay. It's important to understand this. Now, they recommend that you get a trained coach, blah, 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 blah. You don't need a trained coach to walk 30 minutes a day, right? Okay. Okay. And so we have a website sponsored by the Ad Council, red flag, Advertising Council, red flag. That means they're ushering you into a high revenue expenditure activity that's going to make big profit for somebody else. Otherwise, why would anyone be able to afford to buy an ad? There you go. Okay, so red flag, the Ad Council. Okay. The American Medical Association and the CDC are sponsoring this site called The Cure for Prediabetes. And what do they recommend? 5 to 7% weight loss. They say it stops prediabetes from progressing to diabetes. Okay. And so 48% of Americans are healthy, but at risk 21% of getting diabetes. Okay. Now, let's take a look at this study. And the study concluded there's no difference between the diets in reversing prediabetes. That's the conclusion of the study. But what was the study? Now, in medical school, we medical students were trained to evaluate studies. And when you read a study and you evaluate a study, most people reading a study will evaluate, okay, what did they do? What was the intervention? And what was the outcome? Ooh. No. You missed it. Bad. So first you have to look at the study design. And how was the study designed? And then once you look at the study design, then you can make a conclusion about what the study means and what the conclusions mean and if they can be applied. Okay, so here we go. We're first going to start with the study design. So it's called a preview project. Multinational means lots of countries. Prevention project, which this person feels fortunate to be a principal investigator on. It's funded, that means paid for, by the European Union and includes 6 European countries plus Australia and New Zealand. Okay, so it's paid for by governments. Got that. So the outcome pertains to government objectives. So we're going to see if we can figure out what the government objective might be. So they recruited 2,300 people with proven pre-diabetes. And we mentioned pre-diabetes, all it is a number, and the number is between 100 and 125 when you wake up in the morning for your blood sugar. That's it. So it's proven. I guess they got tested more than once. Okay. The trial is different from many other diabetes prevention studies in that it had an initial weight loss period on a low-calorie diet over 8 weeks. Participants had to lose 8%, ding, 8% of their body weight in order to qualify for the next phase. But wait, didn't we check out all these other websites on prediabetes and find the cure for prediabetes is a weight loss of anywhere from 5 to 7 pounds? And they're saying to be in the study, you have to lose 8% of body weight? Okay, so they only studied people who successfully lost 8% of their body weight. Well, of the 2,300, how many people managed this feat? Now, remember, they're put on a low-calorie diet. It wasn't high protein, low protein, just low calorie. Okay, got that. The successful participants, which were the vast majority, that's an unscientific number, right? They're doing this study. You got 2,300 people. You think you could count them up? Vast majority. So I had to look up vast majority. That's what I looked it up. Vast majority means 90%. Okay, got that? 90%. So 90% of people accomplished this task and went on to the next phase. But wait, they already implemented the cure for prediabetes. How can you then, going forward, say, we're studying prediabetes when you just implemented the cure? So what you're really studying might be how effective was that cure? In other words, how effective was this weight loss? Okay, so we have a major intervention here which people had to surmount in order to continue in the study. So let me ask you a question. Just saying. The 10% who failed to lose weight, do you think they're the ones who are most likely to progress to diabetes later on? And they've already been eliminated from the study. Okay. Now, our next thing was, so we only lost 10% right there. And in that 10% may have contained 7 to 10% of those who would have gone on to get diabetes. I'm just trying to explain to you the process. So by designing the study, they've already almost eliminated the disease they're looking for. Here's the next step. So the successful participants, the 90% who remain, were then put into a diet and physical activity program for the next 3 years. The diet alternatives were, get this, high protein red meat with a low glycemic index or moderate protein red meat with a moderate glycemic index. So we have glycemic index low, glycemic index moderate, and we're going to see how these diets influence progression to diabetes. All right. The physical interventions were the same. Participants were introduced to the diet and activity program by dietitians and exercise therapists who had been trained centrally within the consortium to deliver cognitive behavioral therapy based and motivational interviewing based advice, teaching them about diet composition, and types of physical activity. So we call this paragraph, I call it a smokescreen, because it doesn't matter. It's really irrelevant because, well, we'll see in the next paragraph why it's irrelevant. Participants had frequent meetings with these specialists to start with, but they became less and less frequent over the 3-year period, such that in the final year they did not see them at all. They saw them at 24 months and then at the very end at 36 months. Which diet was better? Now remember, low glycemic index, moderate glycemic index. And do we know what those numbers were? No, they don't tell us. Meh. None of your business. Meh. All right. Overall, we had a little over 50% of participants drop out. Uh-oh, red flag, red flag, red flag. Well, let's do the math on this. 10% drop out up front because they just couldn't figure out how to stick to a diet, lose 9% of their body weight. Those are obviously the ones most likely to progress on to diabetes later. Of the remaining 90%, half drop out for, we'll say, we don't know, gone. But in any case, the 10% that dropped out in the beginning and the 50% that dropped out here were never counted. So 60% of the 2,300 people in the study were never counted. And we're looking for something, diabetes, an outcome, that only happens in 21% of the people. Okay. So let's see what we got. So based on their initial risk, we predicted 21% would develop type 2 diabetes at 3 years. The expectation was that participants on the moderate protein diet with activity would drop the rate of type 2 diabetes to about 15%, and those on the high protein diet would drop it even further to about 10%. So they're going on glycemic index. So using the words protein, the difference between the two diets is the glycemic index. And so basically what we're looking at here is paleo diet or paleo plus, right? In other words, we're talking about raising the meat, lowering the carbs. There we go. And they are surprised that only 4% developed type 2 diabetes. Only 4% developed type 2 diabetes. I'm surprised even that number developed type 2 diabetes because 60% of the people you didn't even count. And the people you didn't count were the ones most likely to get diabetes, the ones who couldn't lose weight and the ones who didn't have the discipline to exercise or continue to exercise and diet. So 60% of pre-diabetics were not even counted. And they are the 60% who are also most likely to develop diabetes. So the percent that did develop diabetes was 4%. But, get this, it was disappointing that there was no difference between the diets. No difference between the diets. So whether the person consumed glycemic index low or moderate did not affect their future chance of developing diabetes. Now, I got some conclusions right there I would draw, which is a glycemic index is, well, just put it in the toilet and flush it. That's it. But they didn't draw that conclusion. Oh, no. These are governments at work. Okay, so we're going to see what the government work shows us. Participants maintained at least some of the weight loss over 3 years with good dietary and physical activity advice. It actually did not matter about the diet composition because both diets were healthy. No, it didn't matter about the diet condition because you started with healthy people. Duh. You eliminated the unhealthy people up front, or potentially unhealthy people, or people with unhealthy inclinations, by saying, hey, you can't lose 9% of your body weight, you can't be in the study, okay? You can't show up for appointments, do this, do that, you can't be in the study. That's like a health insurance company locating its office on the 3rd floor with no elevator. Who is going to successfully get to the office and fill out the applications? The healthy people. So that's essentially what this study did. It screened for healthy people. So diet was higher in protein, lower in glycemic index, was deemed to be healthier, but it wasn't enough better than the moderate protein diet to make a difference. That's the conclusion they drew. They didn't take a look at, our selection process. We probably just eliminated the people who are likely to be unhealthy. And so what did they conclude? Oh, this is too cute. The challenge now is what to do going forward. Clearly 3 years is good, but it's not a lifetime. So in other words, maybe we didn't measure long enough. Somehow we need to develop systems to help these people manage their problems, keep their weight off, continue to be physically active, and minimize the chance of transitioning from their pre-diabetic condition to type 2 diabetes. But wait a minute. What they did was extremely effective. Extremely effective. If you lose 9% of body weight and exercise, the chances of getting diabetes is reduced by 81%. That's more effective than most drugs are for any condition. 81% effective rate. And then, interestingly, among the participants who finished, 18% no longer had prediabetes. They had glucose levels in a healthy range. Certainly, they need to maintain that state. The other participants who still had prediabetes need some sort of help in the future to remain in the pre-diabetic condition or to move toward normal, healthy glucose levels. Now, the conclusion they drew. Remember, government-sponsored study. The conclusion they drew was that everyone, healthy or not, needs intervention in their life. So interestingly, among participants who finished, 18% no longer had prediabetes. They need to maintain that state. Even the word state is being used. Other participants who still have prediabetes need some sort of help to remain in the pre-diabetic condition. Now, the real conclusion of the study is that government intervention under the guise of healthcare is needed by all people. That's the real conclusion of the study. The headline, what did the headline say? No difference between diets in reversing prediabetes. But wait, prediabetes was reversed in 18%. Now here's the deal. There's a lot of other conclusions one could draw. First of all, preventing prediabetes is like preventing pre-crime. So I had to go look up pre-crime. Pre-crime is a term, means you can intervene to punish, disrupt, incapacitate, or restrict those deemed to embody future crime threats. And so really prediabetes is identifying a person believed to embody the future threat of diabetes. And this study is aimed at, the real goal is to justify the disruption and restriction of the lives of those deemed to embody future diabetes. In other words, 48% of Americans. But let's take a look at those 9% of Americans who have diabetes. The medical industrial complex itself has concluded that if you treat those diabetics to the standard of care and their hemoglobin A1C is 8 or less, that's a pretty high hemoglobin A1C, then you increase their annual death rate by 30%. So you cannot make a case for treating not only pre-diabetics, but diabetics with a blood sugar under 140. So, in fact, let's just take a look and check that. Hemoglobin A1C of 8, what is that? HGB A1C of 8 is what? Is what glucose? Whoa. Excuse me. Hemoglobin A1C of 8 is 183, a glucose of 183. So literally, you have an industry posturing to offer therapy and intervention for people with a blood sugar of 125 or less, when they have proven, their own research, that when they treat blood sugars under 183, they increase the death rate. I don't know about that. So again, this is being sponsored by governments, by a government coalition, and obviously as governments, and government's a government, not finding any fault here, they're looking for ways to intervene in the lives of people, and that's all it's about. And in the United States, if we take this research and generalize it, it would justify intervention in the lives of 48% of Americans who are actually healthy. So the other thing to look at is, since only 9% of Americans are diabetic, by adding prediabetes to the group of people who should be treated or have intervention in their lives by the medical industrial complex, you've expanded the market 5 to 6-fold. So now you can treat 59% of Americans instead of 9% of Americans. And talk about increasing the size of the market. I mean, it's awesome. But again, the selection process here is key. By eliminating the 10% off the bat, who said, hey, I am not losing 9%, sorry, that plan is not for me. And by making the study rigorous enough that there's a 50% dropout rate. People can't just show up for all these appointments. Oh my God, I got a life to live. So you eliminate those people who would be most likely to get diabetes. And then the biggest slap in the face is the two diets, low glycemic, medium glycemic, no difference. So that's another question that's another red flag, a serious red flag, because you have to ask yourself, we've got a study design. We're trying to show what diet might improve diabetes. So you want to pick one diet that's clearly better than another diet. So you want to say, this is a diet we think is going to be like the one that's going to work. Great. Why don't we pick one that's like way different? If you really think a meat diet with a low glycemic index is healthy, why not compare it to a vegetarian or vegan diet? At least pick two diets that are so different that there's likely to be a distinction. Now, the other question is, the fact that they designed these two diets and did not have the ability to pick diets that would be different in their effect on diabetes shows a fundamental lack of understanding about what it is in a diet that creates diabetes. So obviously, the members of the medical industrial complex who designed this study had no clue about what dietary interventions would actually improve diabetes or get rid of it. So we have an ignorance level here. And the ignorance level, again, is further demonstrated by the adverse outcomes in diabetics with fasting blood sugars less than 183. That whoever's at the helm here, navigating the standard of care, is missing the boat and literally in the ocean drowning. Now, you got to take a look at this. 80% of the pre-diabetics were never going to get diabetes. They were never going to get diabetes. And 100% will not get any adverse consequences from being pre-diabetic. So the actual state of being pre-diabetic has no adverse health consequences at all. Again, it's just like taking a person, clean record, never committed a crime, and said, you are at risk of committing a crime. We're going to put you under restrictions, whatever the restrictions might be. So just by screening the people that they decide to study, they create a drop of 81% in those who have progressed to disease. So the actual raw numbers are 21% would have got diabetes, but only 4% actually did. And because the diets showed up having no difference, what you can say is in a healthy person, eating a low glycemic diet or a moderate glycemic diet, no impact in a healthy person because these are healthy people. But in a healthy person, losing 9% of your body weight and having a little more discipline in your life reduces your chances of progressing to diabetes by 81%. And that's really that's all the study showed, because that's the only variable intervention they made. But this is the important thing to understand. The medical intervention was with healthy people. So person with prediabetes is healthy. They do not have diabetes, and they do not have a condition that, if left untreated as is, would cause them any problem. So this is a slippery slope. So establishing the dominion of medicine/government in people who are not yet sick is a problem. So while you may or may not agree with forced vaccinations, the point here is, should the government decide what you eat, when you eat, how much you should eat, if you should exercise, what kind of exercise, when you're healthy? When you're unhealthy, all right, maybe there's some discussion, maybe there's a government health program, it might affect tax revenues, whatever. But in a healthy person, does the government have that jurisdiction? And what this study is saying is yes. And that's the true conclusion of the study. So what they're saying is, when you are healthy and doing a pretty darn good job of things on your own, should the government intervene in your life to make lifestyle decisions for you? The answer is a resounding yes. Yes. So that's what they concluded in the study. But again, in a study where 60% of participants were not counted, can you conclude anything about something that happens only 21% of the time? And the answer is, statistically speaking, no, absolutely not. This study right now should be terminated. It has no ability to determine anything about the progression from pre-diabetes to diabetes, because 60% of people were not counted, number one. And number two, there is no difference between the two diets. So the study proves really nothing. So there are a lot of reasonable conclusions to draw from this study. Pretty distressing, but reasonable. One, medical intervention of any kind in prediabetes is not advised. Number two, medical intervention is harmful. In other words, we have two diets, but we don't know if they were equally helpful or equally harmful. We don't know. We don't know. Sure, 18% of people stop being pre-diabetic, but we don't have a control group. We don't know if every year 18% of people stop being pre-diabetic anyway. We don't know. The two diets recommended in the study were identical. We could conclude that. But again, we have a healthy population. In a healthy population, that means you can give someone, a healthy person, a diet that's relatively unhealthy, and their liver and their kidneys are going to make up the difference here. And so this is why you can't say, oh, well, this is a healthy diet. It'll work for everybody. No. You can have a person on an unhealthy diet, and if they're drinking enough water to stay hydrated, if they're having enough bowel movements, and if the nutritional value of the food they're eating is high enough, they can remain healthy over a very long period of time. So this study failed to measure the true determinants of health. Next, the design study was flawed. That's obvious, it was flawed. Next, we could conclude the study is meaningless. Due to selection bias, the way they selected the people they chose to count, the study is totally meaningless. The next thing is government intervention in the health practices of healthy people is okay. And that's really the underlying conclusion of this study, is that it's okay for government, it's okay for the healthcare system to intervene in the lives of healthy people. And of course, the perennial conclusion of all research is more research needs to be done. And so, of course, people needing research need continued employment, and of course, more research needs to be done. Well, that's their opinion. What do I think? Well, what should you do if you're pre-diabetic? You could probably guess, but I'll tell you anyway. I think if you have pre-diabetes, ignore it. Ignore it. Don't do a darn thing until it becomes diabetes. Because guess what? 80% chance it will not become diabetes. So, being pre-diabetic is a negative predictor for getting diabetes. So if you have pre-diabetes, there's an 80% chance you will never get diabetes. I'll take those odds. Sounds pretty darn good to me. If you have diabetes, that's another matter, then go ahead, make lifestyle changes. What lifestyle changes? Honestly, don't do a darn thing your doctor recommends. We can see by this study it's not effective, right? So just what did work? The low-calorie diet. So low-calorie diet, and your goal is to lose 9% of your body weight. We're talking type 2 diabetes here, so you're probably overweight. What else could you do? You could just go to vitalitycapsules.com, yeah, it's my website, and get the report. It's free, and follow that diet. Generally, people do that. Diabetes, type 2, gone within 2 weeks. Usually within the first week, so pay attention. Cut back those medicines as that blood sugar falls. The next thing you conclude from this study is the effectiveness of 9% weight loss and discipline is what was really measured, and that was 81% effective. Unfortunately, they did not have a control group. They didn't say, okay, 2,300 people, a certain number we're not going to do anything to. We're just going to check you back in 3 years. That would have been what's called a control study. You have a control group that you do absolutely nothing with. Like, hey guys, on day one, this little shout out, say hello, check it back in 3 years. That would have been a control group. This study had no control group. They gave you 2 diets so that in case you weren't listening or in case you weren't watching closely, you would think, oh, there's a control group, there's this diet and that diet. Control means you measure the effect of no intervention at all. That was not done. And had they measured a control group, hey, check you back in 3 years, they might have found that the do nothing group, which means doctor does nothing, government does nothing, they might have had a better outcome on their own with the help of Dr. Google for YouTube videos than the structured program that was set out in their study. But they'll never know. Why? They didn't look. They didn't look. So the conclusion, of course, is if you feel healthy, you are. In other words, medical intervention in this particular study was shown to be basically of no consequence. And so the real cure, if there was one in this study, is the ability to lose 9 pounds of body weight by restricting one's calories and walking for 30 minutes a day. And the diets themselves are actually irrelevant. In fact, when I work with diabetics, the first thing I tell them to do is why don't you just drink more water, eat a little less, and walk around the block. And especially people with pre-diabetes or a diabetic reading under 200 works wonderful. That's pretty much all they need. I mean, you don't need to get into all kinds of details about eat this, don't eat that. And the next question, of course, is should the medical industrial complex even be treating diabetes at all? There's a startling question. That is a startling question. And if you look at Hispanics, the answer is no. Absolutely not. How do you figure that out? Well, Hispanics, these are native Spanish speakers who happen to live in the United States. That's Hispanic. They have the highest, one of the highest diabetes rates. Their diabetic rate is over 12%. The national rate in the United States is 9%, yet they live 7 years longer and healthier than the average American. So if they can do that with a higher diabetes rate, then you have to call into question what's really going on here. Is the diabetes a disease? Or is diabetes, as we are now measuring and labeling it, a coping mechanism of living in our industrialized society with synthetic food? So let me make this clear. Hispanics don't eat organic. They're not avoiding MSG, because you look at those flavor packets they cook with, MSG. But they're living healthier and they're living longer. So what makes the most sense is to take a look at what those Hispanics are doing, number one. Number two, not make any moves to spread healthcare to Hispanics. If you look on the internet, they'll in the United States, they'll say, we're trying to give Hispanics equal access to healthcare. Well, it looks like the Hispanics are doing very well without it, thank you. So, the conclusion then, as far as what you should do, is definitely don't allow any medical intervention for your prediabetes. That's numero uno. The medical industrial complex has proven itself. Every intervention, medical intervention, whether drug or in this case, doctor prescribed diet, has been shown to be ineffective in influencing progression from prediabetes to diabetes. And again, if you have prediabetes, understand you've been just diagnosed as being healthy. So this is key. So if you're going to treat prediabetes, I suggest you go to the nearest police department and first get your pre-crime treated. That's what you need to treat. You'd be better off treating your pre-crime than treating your prediabetes. Okay, that brings us to questions. Dum-ba-dum. All right, there we go. Got our icon here. Take a look at questions. Okay. We have Nia who says, vegans have to do a lot of diet research. From that, we can deduce that Nia might be vegan. Okay. I'm taking a novel approach to clean water, one that is disapproved of by every internet search I've tried. All right, Nia. So, when you embark on something for your health, I think you should focus more, not so much on agreement with various internet sources as you should just say, hey, you're trying it out, is it working for you? Okay. So she's using the water from the dehumidifier. And she says it's just water with some dust, mold, and maybe aluminum. She adds chlorine to it, lets it sit for a while, filters it through a Brita-type filter, which, Nia, is pretty much useless, but that's okay. Then you cook it in a pressure cooker for 10 minutes. Okay? What do you think? Good system? And of course, I add magnesium, calcium, iodine, copper to my food every day, and have to give up potatoes as I developed a bad reaction to nightshades, and I have to get potassium from other sources. Okay, so Nia, this is a lot of work for your water. I just say get a distiller and just put it through your distiller. That would be simpler. I am taking olive leaf extract and turkey tail mushroom extract to prevent reinfection by the herpes zoster virus. Never want to go through that again. All right. Yeah. So yeah, just go ahead and distill your water. I think that would be a place to start. And then you have to take a look at your diet and see if you might want to just add some high copper and high magnesium foods. All right. Brunilda says, I was wondering what you think about the whole carnivore diet that's going around at the moment. Limiting carbs, but eating a lot of meats, organ meats as well. Cheeses, lard, and dairy. Lots of testimonials of people losing weight or healing themselves going that route. Is there any truth in what they're saying? So, Brunilda, there is always some truth in everything. Nothing is 100% false and nothing is 100% true. So there is truth in everything. Let's see if we can find the truth in the carnivore diet. The truth in the carnivore diet is that many people have been victimized by the low cholesterol propaganda and by the vegan propaganda. And the cure for both of those is the carnivore diet, especially with organ meats and cheeses and lard. All of those things are very high in cholesterol and literally remedy the cholesterol deficiency created by the health fads of the past 40 years. So that's where that goes. Now, I'm personally not a fan of cheese or dairy because it causes respiratory problems, headaches, hormone problems, and whatever. But cheeses are fairly high in cholesterol. So I would say get your cholesterol from the organ meats. Now, what about people who are more on the vegan side of life? If you're doing fine in your vegan diet, then stick with it. If you're not, then, consider some organ meats and some flesh meats. So Jesse says, I have a question about your candida protocol with the sugar and turpentine. How do we support the kidneys in this case? Okay, so you follow the whole protocol, Jesse. You have to go to vitalitycapsules.com, download your free Candida Cleaner report, and in that report, it talks about how much water you should drink. And between the water and the turpentine, the kidneys are not only supported, but they're cleansed and they're tremendously improved. So that's why it's a whole protocol. So you need to read the whole thing. And it supports the liver and the kidney. It's just really a major miracle. And Tammy says, thank you for the work that you do. I have viewed many of your videos and listened to several of your podcasts. I've also followed the turpentine protocol outlined in the Candida report. Okay. I have a few questions due to recent hospitalizations for bleeding from diverticulosis over the past 3 months, during which time I received 10 units of blood. That's a lot of blood. Should I continue the castor oil turpentine protocol while I have diverticulosis? I would switch to turpentine and sugar. The doctors recommended a high fiber diet, and the nephrologist has increased my daily water intake from 1 liter to 1.5 liters daily, since I also have stage 5 kidney disease. So, water is a very important part of the Candida Cleaner protocol. So you have to make sure. Is that Tammy or is that Jesse? Maybe this is Jesse. Do you still recommend castor oil turpentine on a daily or weekly basis? I do not recommend castor oil and turpentine on a daily basis. It's way too stressful. And I think with your condition, the castor oil is not a good idea. I would go to the sugar and turpentine. How much water do you recommend for stage 5 kidney disease? Measure your urine output and drink that much water plus 1/2 to 1 liter. So your urine output is the key there. Do kidney doctors intentionally dehydrate you? Yes. Can one safely drink more water to remove fiber in one's body? You would have to, because if you increase your fiber but don't increase your water, you'll get a bowel obstruction. So it looks like, Jesse, you're in danger here. You got issues. You're going the wrong way here. So like I say, people, I don't have the time to answer all questions during these podcasts. So if you have additional questions that are not answered, you'd like them answered, the way to do that would be to make an appointment at vitalitycapsules.com/appointment. And this is Jesse or Tammy. It looks like Jesse. Probably an appointment would be best to get a little more detail into what you're doing and to help you clear things up. And this is Tammy. Tammy says, Dr. Daniels, is there anything else you'd recommend for a cold other than increasing water, bowel movements, and Vicks Vapor Rub in the chest? For a cold. Yeah, you can do a neti pot. So you can heat 1/4 distilled water to anywhere, I prefer 110 degrees, but anywhere between 105 and 110 is good. You want to add 2 teaspoons of salt and then put a pot full through each nostril, and that clears out all of your sinuses and removes the mucus. Thank you for doing these wonderful shows. They help so much and are very interesting as well. You're welcome, Tammy. Okay, we have Waynona. Winona says, for the past few months, and I think after starting to use electric toothbrush, which I think doesn't get up down into gums as the bristles are flat, I've been getting a little blood from my top back gum when I brush. Dentist says it's likely caused from not brushing well enough, and food may have accumulated to aggravate gum, and I should brush more thoroughly. I do it more. After the dentist was digging up into the gum to clean it out, it now hurts too bad to brush thoroughly. How about that? He says the alternative is surgery to close the gum up. Should I stop electric toothbrush and continue with a regular toothbrush with graduated bristles? Definitely stop the electric toothbrush. Also, do you have any natural protocols to help heal my gum? I already use Vitality capsules. Definitely stop the electric toothbrush. That is the problem. And the doctor created even more trauma, so you definitely don't want to go that route. Number 1, reduce the trauma. The next thing is you can just swish and spit with hydrogen peroxide, or you can get a little Q-tip and just dab back there with some clove oil just to help reduce the inflammation. But the big deal here is if you reduce the trauma, it should heal pretty well. And Simi says, hi, Dr. Daniels. Thank you for always telling us the truth. My question is, what are the best ways to heal my fatty liver? I am type 2 diabetic and 59 years old. I lost 80 pounds so far, 80 to go. I've done several fasts and intermittent fasting. Thank you. Okay. So, Simi, the best way to get rid of your fatty liver is to get rid of your diabetes. Your body stores the blood sugar as fat. So if you are now taking medications for your diabetes, they are actually causing your fatty liver. So you should have your diabetes cured by now. I'd recommend going to vitalitycapsules.com, download the Candida Cleaner Report, and follow that diet. So people who are overweight or obese, most of them are not diabetic. Even though losing weight helps your diabetes, being overweight doesn't mean you have to be diabetes. So if you've already lost 80 pounds, you should have lost your diabetes along with it. So if you have not, then you're not following the right diet. Go to vitalitycapsules.com, download the Candida Cleaner Report, and check it out. Vitality capsules are also helpful, people find, in controlling their blood sugar as well, because it dumps the toxins out of the liver, allowing the liver to better handle the blood sugar and to heal itself. Let's see. Okay. So that brings us pretty much to close of the show. So I'd like to remind people that we have the Candida Cleaner Report. Please get your report on how to use turpentine. It has definitely changed my life. It has allowed me to not spend over $100,000 in healthcare, insurance premiums, co-pays, and really avoid a lot of medical intervention and manipulation. And I think anyone, even casually using the report, would save easily over $1,000 a year on medical intervention. And it is available at no cost to you from vitalitycapsules.com. I'd also like to remind people that if I didn't get to your question, appointments are available at vitalitycapsules.com/appointment. And of course, check out our sponsor, vitalitycapsules.com. All right, we'll see you next week. And as always, think happens.